Carey Wedler.
Yes.
It's nice to see you.
Greetings.
Yeah, greetings to you. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How about you?
Good. Is everything okay in Los Angeles and everything?
Oh, it is. I mean, in general, the world has just been making me rather sad, but I'm grateful that I'm in a position to be able to speak out about it. So I'm trying to see the positive amid a lot of negativity lately.
Well, it's funny you would say that because I never asked for this reputation, but people consider me to be this like optimistic guy who's always
I've noticed.
Right. I don't know why. I mean, I never set out to do, but lately I've not been feeling that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
A lot of my optimism stems from well, it's a little bit like you sort of assume that for me personally, like because I'm an anarchist and because I believe in a world without politics, part of me is always imagining the way the world would work without politics.
Right.
And then politics comes along and like ruins everything.
It's like I forget that the real world is just still happening because I get so caught up in how good it could be, and then I come back down to earth. Like I end up on like a right-wing news thread or like a left-wing news thread, and I just see the comments that I just have to, oh my God, like, where have I been? I forgot that I live in the real world. It's
no, everybody's longing for some ruler to make the rules and determine the fate of the universe, and it's actually dreadful, right? I mean, everything it's terrible.
And it's coming from all sides now. I mean, it's just relentless, and everybody's so convinced that they're right. And I mean, everybody just wants more government in one way or another. And we're just on the sidelines like, peace, you guys. Can we not have any more violence? And nobody's listening.
Yeah, domestic, international, whatever. Take the guns, take the property.
Take the Muslims, get rid of them.
Yeah, take our right to hire immigrants. Surveil us, browbeat us, rob us of our ability to hire and fire who we want. Yeah, it's just everybody's lobbying for restrictions on freedom, as far as I can tell. I mean,
exactly.
And if you stand up in front of a crowd these days and make sense, you get booed.
Exactly.
What's wrong with you? You can't be president. You want freedom? That's not going to happen.
That's not what America is about. What America is about, safety and security. And if you violate that, I mean, you're out. You just line you up and shoot you, put you in a FEMA camp. I mean, the things I have heard recently, it's just mind blowing.
It's totally out of control. I mean, we tend to think of politics as like a sports competition, and in sports, we do tend to think that the winner of the contest is the best.
Right.
But in politics now, I think we need to revise our view. It should be something like, if you're the most popular guy, there's something terribly wrong with you.
Yeah, most likely, yeah. And what's so sad, too, is that, I mean, we can talk about all the candidates, but look at the millions of people who are supporting them and encouraging them and giving sales to their campaign or giving wind to the sales of their campaign.
Let me ask you this, Carey. I mean, do you I was thinking about writing an end of the year column, something like how my worldview has been rocked as a result of 2015. Do you feel a little bit the same way? I mean, like, do you find yourself like fundamentally shaken?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's in general, ever since I became active, it's been like 5 years since I really started thinking in a different way. And it's always, I'm shaken like kind of always, but I always seem to manage to find the positivity. And don't get me wrong, there's still hope. We're just hitting a rough patch. But I think especially since the Paris attacks, people have just hit this fever pitch of hysteria, and it's violent, it's aggressive, it's ignorant, it's xenophobic. It's like everything that I'm trying to fight against. And I thought we were kind of getting somewhere with. I was just reading today that some of the Islamophobia had died down, but since Paris and San Bernardino, it's just like off the charts now. And it's just so sad to see that. And I made a video about this actually a couple weeks ago. And one of the things I said in it is it's so difficult for me because the people who are being so xenophobic right now and collectivizing these groups of people are the ones who are like the proudest to be Americans. And I thought that being American was like, individualism was a fundamental tenet of that. And so it's really difficult for me to see people collectivizing and still standing on those principles. It's like, oh my God, you're doing it wrong, you guys. Like there's a fundamental misunderstanding here and no one wants to acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's been really grim, and like I say, I hope that it's a temporary hysteria, but it's truly it's out of control. Like principles have been just thrown to the wind, uh, and freedom. I never really, when I was growing up, I remember learning about fascism in Europe and that sort of thing. Like, how did it happen, or Bolshevism in Russia? Like, oh my God, well, that would never happen again. We've learned. Now it's for the first time in my life, I see how it happens. I get it now, and it's almost invisible to you. And it happens fast but slow. In the sense, it's just a some sort of frenzy happens. People want to react to it. They reach for the closest weapon, and fundamentally change the structure of a society. And so I get that now, and I never got it before.
And well, that's the thing. I'm actually at my mom's right now. I film at my mom's because the lighting's better. And she watches MSNBC, and don't get me started on that. But I was just plucking my eyebrows in her bathroom, and I heard the TV in the background, and they're talking about Donald Trump. And they had taken a poll, and they were saying that like 60% of Trump supporters, I think it was Trump supporters, I kind of heard snippets, but 60% of some segment of the American population is terrified that they are going to die in a terrorist attack. And I mean, your chances of dying in a terrorist attack are not 60% or higher. Like, it's a very, 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 very tiny risk, but people have been sort of goaded and herded into this fear that that's the biggest threat to their lives. It's not police. It's not any of the poison in their food. It is a terrorist. And even though, how often does it happen? It's not that often. We've seen a lot of debunkings of the statistics of mass shootings because they're false, but people are still down to this fundamental fear.
But Carey, I don't think it's even possible to talk about the subject without talking about racism. I mean,
no, of course not.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when bad things happen to people, their first recourse is to blame foreign peoples who are not like them. I mean,
exactly.
This is why Nazism worked. This is why fascism works. Because people look at themselves and they go, "Who am I?"
Right.
Who are the people I trust? Well, they're my family, my friends. They all look like me. They talk like me. They hold the same religious values I do. And if something goes wrong, it's very easy to just say, oh, here's these others, these Syrians, which most Americans think of as being, they don't even know anything about Syria. Like, what is that?
They couldn't find it on a map, I guarantee it.
No, but it's a different religion, and the skin color is slightly different from, and so on, and people are just ready to demonize people without any evidence whatsoever, without any factual basis, and but it's really just rooted, I think, to some extent, in just the human personality, to hate on.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and I think collectivism I think it makes it easier for people to understand the world if they can box people into groups. I think it's just fundamental. It's like the way the brain wants to organize things. And I think what it comes down to is that, and I experienced this actually myself. I'm not Jewish, like I don't practice any religion. Technically by blood, I'm Jewish, but I was not raised that way, But just because the very fact that I knew that people in my family had died in the Holocaust, I had this, not just because of that, just because I'm Jewish, I had this association with anything that was Jewish. And that really prevented me from taking a hard look at what was going on in Israel and Palestine. And it's because I think what it was fundamentally is that if I had to accept that the group that I belong to is doing something wrong, maybe that made me wrong too. Because as humans, we're so attached to these collectivist identities. It's sort of biological. We need a group to hang on to. It's us versus them. And I see this happening right now because, rather than acknowledge that maybe America is an extremely violent society, it's a lot easier to say, like, no, it's the Muslims. We're peaceful. My religion's peaceful. The Muslims are violent. It's like, never mind, we've been bombing them for decades and interfering in all of their affairs. No. They're brown. They're the other. They're wrong. We're right. And it's so simplistic. And I think that's why I'm so frustrated is that that's not how the world is. It's not black and white. It's a lot more nuanced.
Well, and Carey, I have to tell you, as a Christian, that's my tradition, that's my heritage, and so therefore, as Jewish, being Jewish is your heritage, and therefore, to some extent, your identity. It's something you carry with you, regardless of your intellectual commitments. And so Christianity is that way for me, regardless of my intellectual commitments. That's who I am. And I hear people talking about Islam now, And well, you know, and I hear this, you know, all the time. I read this all the time. It's like, well, unlike Christianity, which is a religion of peace, Islam is a religion of war. You know, they'll never be satisfied until they conquer the next thing. War and terror is baked into the fabric of their theology, and you know, I'm deeply suspicious of these claims, because if you read, and I don't, you know, I'm not sitting around reading the Quran, right? But you can find plenty of passages in the Quran that are, you know, pro peace, and you know, and exhibit a Christian sense of justice, you know. And you can cite plenty of things, both in the Christian and Hebrew scriptures, that seem grotesquely violent. You know, right? I mean, a lot.
Have you seen that video? It's been going around. I think it went pretty viral. Somebody took Bible verses and they read them to people, and under the pretense that it was the Quran. And these people were like, oh my God. And then, you know, they flipped it around and they realized it's actually from the Bible. And it's those little things that I like to think get to people. It's everywhere. If you just Google it.
I totally believe it. I mean, look, as a Christian, I feel some responsibility for this, you know, in some, I mean, I'm not personally responsible, but it's my tradition. So, but Christianity exists in many different iterations. You know, so you've got the pacifist Quakers and Mennonites and that sort of thing. You've got a beautiful sort of anarchist pacifist tradition in Christianity, but you've also got the, you know, the Crusades and warlike temperament and the nationalism. And in my own lifetime, I've seen Christianity invoked as the reason for war, you know, in Iraq and elsewhere. So, I mean, Christianity is very flexible. You know, it takes on its different, it embodies it, instantiates itself in different ways in different times, according to kind of different doctrinal commitments and according to the ruling class. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to discover that Islam is very similar in that way. I mean, it's almost as old in a religion in that sense. I mean, what Islam is like 7th century or something, you know. So I mean, for modern Americans, it's irrelevant. I mean, this is Middle Ages stuff, you know. So it wouldn't surprise me that Islam is similarly adaptable, you know. So it can be the jihad religion, or it can be a religion of the bazaar and commerce, you know, and peace. So anyway, it bothers me very much to hear Christians talking about their own moral superiority.
Right. Well, that's actually something that I've been noticing, because I have a lot. Well, I think they have since made an exodus from my public page, but I had a lot of very far right people on my public page.
What's it called? Like what's it called? The alt-right, the neo-reactionaries, so-called.
That's actually the word I was thinking, but I wasn't sure if that's what you were going to say. Yeah. And you know what I heard a lot of is well, Muhammad was a child rapist. He was violent. Jesus preached of peace. Our religion's peaceful. And it's like, to me, that's sort of like a moot argument, because if you're being violent, you're being violent. It doesn't matter if your original leader was peaceful. If you're being violent, that's actually even worse, in my opinion. I mean, it's not worse. There are different kinds of violence. They're equally bad, because all violence is bad unless it's defensive. But I had all these people saying, like, well, Islam is fundamentally violent. There's nothing you can do to change that. It's like, well, I would like to speak to the contrary, because I just wrote an article about the largest Muslim group rooted in Indonesia, and they formed as a reaction to Wahhabism, which is a Saudi ideology. So, I mean, how can you possibly say that every Muslim is inherently violent when they're combating sects of violence within their own religion?
Of course.
But just because Jesus was peaceful, I mean, I can bomb anybody I want, and my religion is still holy. I mean, it is mind-blowing.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, as a Catholic, I mean, I look back at our Catholic history. I mean, the Catholic Church was developed and shaped and formed itself. Its symbols, its buildings, its hierarchical structure, everything was developed around replicating what many people saw as the missing, the power vacuum left in light of the collapse of Rome, right? So you have the whole of Catholicism as a structure and a religion replicating the power structures of the ancient world. I mean, that was sort of the goal.
Exactly.
the idea. And you can't you cannot visit the Vatican and not recognize this. I mean, this is the most obvious thing in the world. I mean, this was an attempt to be a European-wide power. I mean, that's and it was until basically the late 19th century. You know,
right?
So come on. And you know, and you want to talk about the Reformation? I mean, this is a religion of nationalism. It was all about rallying around the state and the people as embodied in the state as being the true heirs of the message of Christ and so on. So, I mean, nobody is guiltless, you know, in this whole process.
Oh, no, not at all. The Jews aren't guiltless. There's Buddhist terrorists. They're like, it's a predilection towards violence. And I don't think that you can predict someone's violent behavior based on their religion. And I know that a lot of people who hate Muslims would disagree with me, but I've seen a lot of violent white people too. So I would prefer not to collectivize. And I think the foundation of freedom, at least the way we see it, at least one of the foundations is viewing people as individuals. And anytime you collectivize otherwise, I think you're doing a disservice to that principle, to freedom.
People who do are just revealing their ignorance and their lack of experience.
Right, exactly. I've seen a lot of that lately.
Yeah, no, I mean, the scariest gangs I've encountered encountered in my life, just, you know, taking the wrong turn, you know, so on, and have been white.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've encountered them the other day when I was driving around. It was like, this is the, you know, I never felt more threatened than I did by these white thugs sitting on a street in Atlanta, Georgia. I was like, oh, where did you come from? You are absolutely terrifying to me. So it all depends on your experiences, you know. I mean, it's
totally. And there are plenty of people, minorities in this country, who have been terrorized by nothing but white people for their entire lives. Right. So how do you explain that away? It's you know, it's all based on experience and what you're exposed to. And I don't fault people for having biases, but I do fault them for not examining them, you know, and not questioning them, because
and Carey, here's the thing that I have to say about libertarianism that's kind of awesome. You know, what we posit is that the world should exist without politics, so that people can't realize their systematic hates in a broad sense, right? So hate may still be horrible, violent impulses may be still disgusting, but at least you can't invade the public civic sphere and make it legal public policy, right? But now we have a system in which we invite, you know, everybody to just unleash their inner devils on the whole population. That's basically that's how I see the political process.
Well, and what's so creepy is they think that they have the right to. I mean, it's like, that's what's so mind-blowing. And we were supposed to talk about the drug war tonight. I think there's so many things going on. We could talk about anything, but to just maybe bring that up for a second, I think that that's most apparent, or at least highly apparent, in the drug war. People think they have the right to tell people what they can and cannot put in their bodies. And like, the justifications I have seen for it are insane. Like, people go down these tangential lines of reasoning where it's like, well, I don't want somebody smoking weed because they're going to get all doped up and then they're going to steal something from me and then I'm the victim. And it's like, well, but where did you get that? Like, you made this story up in your head, and based on this falsehood and based on this narrative, wherever you heard it, whether it's like Rush Limbaugh or Hillary Clinton, I don't know, wherever you heard it, you think that gives you the right to regulate other people. And that's what's so frustrating to me about this political system, is at this day and age, no matter what your ideology, people seem to think that that's their right. And
that's right. Yeah. Whatever your values are, whatever your culture is, whatever your preferences are, you know, those should be exercised and the most macro coercive.
Exactly.
And it's a grim temptation and ultimately corrupting of the human soul. You know, because I mean, I don't deny anybody's right to believe anything they want. I mean, truly. And if you want to believe,
I'm the same.
You're right. I mean, if you hate Islam, you hate the Prophet, you know, fine.
Right.
You don't like people who are of a different race, fine. I mean, more or less. I mean, like, it's harmful to you, and it might cause like micro harm, you know. But you have no right to impose your insane biases and prejudices on the whole public And yet we've constructed
Exactly.
a political system that invites people to do exactly that. You know?
Oh, absolutely. And it's disheartening just because I think the problem, at least one of my theories about the problems with democracy, is that Americans, through their public educations, through all of the conditioning, it's weird because it's this idea of individualism. It's like my idea counts and my vote counts and I get to have a say. And then that translates into this mass collectivism where people are making decisions for other people. And so to me, it's just a total contradiction. And it's frustrating to me too, because on the other side of the coin is, if you want to be Christian, be Christian. You want to be Muslim, do whatever you want. I don't care what you believe, like you said, but at the same time, coming from the left, if you look at the way that they're trying to regulate society right now, in my view, if you do that through the state, what's going to happen? All you're going to do is make all the racists even more bitter and make them hate you even more because you're forcing them in. Yeah, it's blowback, exactly.
This is blowback no matter what. I got to tell you, because I'm very sympathetic with probably more so than you, with the sort of typical leftist values. But I
used to be a liberal. I get it, and I still have a lot of those values. But go ahead, sorry.
You have a special resentment against the left. I have a special resentment against the right, and that's because of our heritage, right? So, so I'm very sympathetic with left-wing values here. But what troubles me is that if you use the political system to bring about your values coercively, you're actually going to make the problem you're combating even worse, because you can't control others' minds.
Exactly.
And if people who resent you perceive you as having grabbed the reins of power and imposed your worldview on them, they're going to be more riled up than ever. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain that this is the basis of the Trump support. It's a resentment against the achievements of the left.
Oh, I'm losing you. I think you're cutting out a little bit.
No.
Hold on. Let's see.
No.
Okay, try again. I think I got you.
How about, am I better?
You're a little styrofoamy, but I think I can hear you. So go ahead.
Styrofoam. I could switch connections. How am I now?
I can hear you. As long as we can hear you, I think we're good.
So I guess so. Yeah. But anyway, I was just saying that I think this is the basis of Trump's support, basically. That this is why people are celebrating Trump, is that he's a reaction to the left.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And what I find interesting is that both sides have this extreme sense of victimization. Like, whether it's the right or the left, like, everyone voting right now is convinced that their beliefs are under assault. And it can't be both. Maybe it is both. I don't know. I'm not the expert, but I think that so much of this comes from fear. It's that what I heard on NBC today is everyone is like, they're terrified, they're afraid. Everyone's so afraid. And whether it's of the other, whether it's of the government or whatever they perceive the government to be, even though they may be asking for more government to protect. It's mind-blowing to me, and it's hard for me to understand how people get so stuck in these paradoxes. Like, How can you say you're a Donald Trump supporter, how can you be so opposed to government and like hate all the buffoons in Washington and then ask them to then institute more government to protect you? It's just, and then not see the fallacy in that. It's just, I know I was an Obama supporter. People gave me links to credible news articles all the time proving that my support for him was misguided. And I don't even remember it. My friends from back then tell me, they'll be like, Carey, I sent you so many news articles and you just brushed them all off. And I have no memory of it. It went right over my head. I don't remember seeing those articles.
But Carey, you have a special kind of loathing of Obama. In fact, you came into the public spotlight because of your attacks on Obama. But you have to admit, though, looking to the future, that Obama is not. Would you admit that he's as bad as he is, and as many hearts as broken, that
what
things could get worse?
Oh my gosh, of course. And what's been really messing with my head lately is I find myself like siding with Obama, like, compared to the extremism that's coming from the right and all the warmongering and all the racism. I'm like, wait, hold on, I don't disagree with Obama here. What? Oh no. Like, and I'm like questioning my core ideals. I'm like, wait, what? I never thought I would like Obama. And I don't. He's a war criminal. He's violent. He's horrible. He's, you know, this, that, and the other. He's a corporatist. He's all of these things. He wants to regulate society in a way I disagree with, but he sounds reasonable when he's talking about the Middle East sometimes. And that's scary to me because he is a war criminal. He is a warmonger. And somehow a warmonger is coming off somewhat sane.
That's true. And you only have to look at his speech last night, which I don't know if you watched, which I didn't watch, but I read about it.
I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to.
Okay, so there's two parts to it, right? I mean, so on one hand, he's got the domestic issues. On the other hand, he's got the foreign issues. Mm-hmm. So on the foreign issues, he's actually really reasonable. I mean, he doesn't want to, I mean, some authorization of yada yada, but he doesn't want ground troops. Basically, he was trying to like pull back war fever, you know, and in a good way.
Right.
And then also, you know, pointing out certain obvious facts that Islam is not evil, you know, that the jihadists don't characterize the whole of the Muslim community and so on. I mean, you hate to have to praise a person for saying such, you know, no-brainer things, but I mean, given the Republicans, you know, so basically he's like trying to settle people down. And I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate it. To me, that's leadership, right? And important leadership. I mean, he's not going to get any credit for it, right? I mean, for Republicans, it's just going to, for them, it's just that speech is going to prove to him that he's actually Islamic.
Exactly. And that's what's so terrifying is it's like, what does the guy have to do to convince people he's not Islamic? And if he is, oh my God, is there not such a thing as freedom of religion in this country? Like, I don't. And it's like, but no, let's ban Muslims from coming in the country. Let's make them wear special badges. And it's just like such a creepy schizophrenic hysteria. Like there are millions of Americans who believe that they are about to be killed by an Islamic extremist. If they walk out the door, they are at risk of being murdered just because they're American. Has nothing to do with their government's actions overseas, has nothing to do with ideology. It's just they will die. And it's because of the Muslims.
No, but this country has a history of this crap. And I want to get back to the Obama speech, but you know, if you read H.L. Mencken, which it's good to go back and read H.L. Mencken. I used to think he was a snob, and you know, whatever. Now I totally get him. But he has this analysis of American politics where he says we have to think of ourselves, America is the promised land, and we are the chosen people. And so if anything goes wrong in the world, we have to blame somebody. So it's the Germans, it's the Mormons, it's the bootleggers. You know, it's always somebody, and it's true in my lifetime. It's always been this way. There's like every day, you can name the enemy number one. And so, for a large part of the Cold War, it was the communists. That was the Russian atheist communists. You know, and so now some years have gone by, and now it's like now we've all just settled on the new great enemy. It's like the world would be a perfect place without the followers of the Prophet Muhammad. You know. And that is the ethos. And I don't know anybody in particular who's promoting this view, but it is the ethos of the moment. And Obama is doing his best to kind of like calm that down. And I must say I appreciate it very, very much.
Same. And I never thought I would say that I ever agreed with anything Obama did ever again. And hell has frozen over. Here I am. Yeah.
On the other hand, he has to whip up fear against domestic terrorism through his agenda of gun control, which is not going to be realized. There's probably no political threat of gun control in this country because it would just be the dumbest thing the ruling class ever attempted. But nonetheless, he did attempt to say that the reason you feel under threat is because we have, you know, a commercial industry of gun manufacturing, and a lot of people own guns. I mean, that was, you know, so it's good and bad, you know, in a sense.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, it's so frustrating to me because, yes, he's making sense, I guess, on the foreign policy, and then it's just such a and I don't want to sound like I'm just speaking talking points, but it is a politicization of a tragedy. And it's not so much disinformation is going around right now in support of gun control. And I'm like, I'm just having to bite my tongue because I'm a member of the yoga community, and the yoga community is, bless their hearts, they're completely ignorant of politics until there's a mass shooting. And then all of a sudden they know everything about politics and are calling for gun control, and it has to be done, and it's a moral obligation. And it's like, well, you're not paying attention to all of the other factors that are making attacks like this happen. And it's so frustrating because these people are calling for gun control, and it's like, it's just such, without citing any specific statistic, but it's so, it just makes no sense to me. It's like, okay, well, speaking from the left, okay, so you don't like police and you think that they abuse their power, so you want to make people give up their guns in order to give them more power. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's so frustrating because they can't be reasoned with. I've tried, and it just turns so ugly, and people get so hysterical. And like, I really try to stay calm. I've gone through my hysterical phase. I've been angry. I've yelled at people. I've used all caps, and that doesn't work. But unfortunately, being calm and reasoned also doesn't work with people like this.
Right.
Because they turn to the capitals and they're like, so what, you just want people to die every day? Hundreds of people are dying in mass shootings. And it's like, well, okay, you're parroting a false statistic that's been debunked, but nobody wants to hear that. They want to pick and choose whatever information fits their view. And so that's where we are, and people are calling for gun control.
And gun control really is an act of mass violence. I mean, what it would mean in terms of American privacy, coercion, it would mean unleashing, armed thugs from the federal government into every home in America, essentially.
Exactly.
There's more than 300 million guns held in private hands in this country. You want to collect them? Yeah,
exactly. Good luck with that.
It's gonna start a civil war.
One of the things I've noticed too, and it's, I don't talk about it a lot, but if you look at most of these mass shootings, you can Google it. Google any of their names, type in military fatigues next to their name, and almost universally, the people who show up to mass shootings are dressed in military gear. And to me, that says something about the culture of this country and about how people view solving problems and how they view glory. Because how is the military promoted in this country? It's the best thing you could ever do. It's honorable. It's glorified. That's how we solve problems. I mean, anytime the military comes into an American film, almost, I don't want to say anytime, but quite often they are the hero. They're solving the problem. And it's intensely glorified. We honor them at sports games. We honor them. We have multiple holidays to honor veterans. And it's really interesting to me that these people who are looking, whether they're looking for redemption or revenge or glory, they show up dressed for battle, and they show up dressed like they're in the military. And I think that that's a really fundamental problem in American culture. It's this fetish with violence, and this idea that violence solves problems. And you can see it in the Middle East. America just wants to go bomb all these countries. And for what? It's an extremely militaristic country. And I think that until we solve that, we will continue to see mass shootings, whether or not we ban guns or not.
Well, and you're probably like me. I don't culturally identify with like people who stockpile weapons or spend their weekends at the rifle range, driving up in their SUVs, dragging out their AK-47s and blasting away. I mean, those people kind of give me the creeps, actually. I mean,
Same.
I'm just like, ugh, and there's something, I think it's like psychologically, there's something weird about these people.
Right.
But on the other hand, the alternative to that, and I do find it disturbing. I really do. I don't get it. I don't understand the culture of it. And I agree with you. Probably it's the American military culture has kind of given rise to this culture, But the alternative to that is to invest much larger weapons with legal force in the hands of the state.
Right, exactly.
And to disarm these people, and it won't work. What it does is it makes these people, who kind of give me the creeps, even angrier.
Exactly. Exactly. And what's so funny to me is I'm an absolute supporter of gun rights. I mean, that's, to me, it is not my right to tell you you can't defend yourself in the way that you so choose. But what I find so funny is that, all these people cite the Constitution. I don't care about the Constitution. That's not my prerogative. That's not my belief system. But people are like, well, it's my right to fight against tyranny. I'm not going to give up my guns. Like, I need to fight back against tyranny. And the same people saying this, libertarians excluded, are the people who have been saying that Obama's a tyrant for the past 8 years. So why haven't they risen up yet? If the whole point of having their guns is to fight against tyranny, and if Obama is a tyrant and he's evil and he's a fascist and he's oppressing them, how come you guys haven't attacked yet? I thought that was the point of having the guns. And I don't care. I don't have your gun for whatever reason you want, but I think it's just sort of a really silly and glorified argument that really has not been applied in any way. It's like, I thought Obama's been oppressing you for 8 years. I thought he has a war on Christians. I thought he's waging jihad in this country, but you're still not going to stand up. You're just going to call the police to protect you. Like, it's just mind boggling. I'm on an anti-right tirade right now just because I was so
Oh, really? Welcome
attacked.
to the club.
Yeah, right. And I always have been. I don't like the left. I don't like the right. But it's so interesting. Like, just because I made a video denouncing Islamophobia, I was labeled a leftist. I was labeled a liberal, even though in the description of the video I said I'm not a liberal or a conservative. What a liberal whore, And I've just been so attacked, and people have been speaking so violent towards me just for speaking about peace and about not collectivizing people. I've just had it. Like, I'm not dealing with these people anymore. If you think that I should go get raped in Afghanistan to learn how good I have it in America, we're not friends. And that's what people say to me. Like, people actually say this. And it's just like, who raises you? Like, my mother didn't raise me to say things like that. Like, I was raised to be respectful. And if I have an issue, articulate it in a reasonable manner, not shout obscenities and insults at people. It's like the degradation of civil society. It's really scary to watch.
I'm sorry that's happened to you. It's fascinating.
I get it a lot.
No. It's fascinating to me. Look, I get it a lot. I can't even imagine what Carey Wedler must go through. I mean, I'm over here like looking at my wounds, like, oh, the neo-Nazis hate my guts. I've had to ban 300 accounts on Facebook, and But I mean, I must experience about like that much compared to what I can't even imagine.
I mean, at this point, it's funny. Like, I don't even really read the comments. Every once in a while, I'll just be like scrolling my comments on my public page just to get a feel for how people reacted. And, for the most part, people are really nice and supportive. And my base isn't even, I wouldn't call them libertarian. Like, I have libertarian followers, but I think a lot of my people are probably independent, leaning towards the left. And I try to sort of like coax them over with my posts, because you believe what you believe. All I can do is state what I believe and hope that it makes sense to people. And by maintaining that neutrality, I guess, like I try to reach people. I'm sorry to covert about my libertarianism, but I mean,
so I'd like to trade followers with you just for a day to see what.
Seriously,
my followers. I don't know. I don't know anything about my followers. I don't even have followers, but
you do. No. I mean, I appreciate mine, and I appreciate when people like. That's the thing. I have plenty of very conservative and like pro-military followers, but they're nice to me. They're civil. Even if I think their argument's ridiculous, they present it to me in a civil manner, and I will respond in a civil way back. Right. But then there are people who just like the internet. It's no holds barred, and the things they say. I mean, I don't know why my mom loves reading the comments, and I always tell her not to, and she always reads them anyway, and she's always just like in shock at what people say to me. Like my friends too, they're just like
loom very large in our social sphere. Moms. Yeah, my mom. I think I've told you this before, but whenever I say the word hell, she'll post on my Facebook. Watch your language, son. So I do think about mom a lot.
I know. I'm just like, oh, mom, please. It's just going to hurt your heart if you read what people say about me. Like my friends, too, they're just always in shock. They're just like, good Lord, where do you find these people? And it's like the internet. I mean, and there's things people would never say to my face. They'd probably be really nice to my face.
It's been very interesting for me to kind of, I follow the sort of a niche of some former anarcho-capitalists who had a kind of a fundamentalist view, and they've been excommunicating people for years for failing to adhere to their following armchair doctrine. In recent days have warmed up to Trump and have proclaimed their loyalty to and their determination to achieve a fascist dictatorship. I mean, and I'm quoting.
I've seen it.
I'm not caricaturing. Okay, this is like quotes.
Yeah. I've seen it too.
Yeah, and I don't know how big a movement it is, but it's there's a big distance between like libertarian anarchism and like fascist dictatorship, right? So
right.
How do you traverse this range in like 2 weeks?
Well, I've seen people justifying fascism as a means to an end to get rid of the leftists. And it's like, I don't think that's how freedom works. I don't think we go full anti-freedom just to get rid of some people we don't like, because it's going to be a little tough to get rid of the fascists once we kill off all the people we don't like. I'm just having trouble with the logic there.
Well, not to mention the fact that fascists have traditionally hated us. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
first on the list. I mean, first they killed the Jews, and then they kill. Oh wait, I guess that's you.
Yeah.
But then they kill me. So, like you're one.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, I am seriously to the point though. In this kind, I'm like scared. I feel like if it gets much worse, I should probably find another country to live in, like before it's too late. And I know that sounds reactionary, but the way they're cracking down on dissent and the other, I'm like legitimately.
If Trump gets elected president, I am going to have to find somewhere else to live.
Me too. It's not safe.
I know. I had I think the first article on the internet, describing, just calling him out as fascist, right? I mean,
and it was so good. It was awesome.
But I was interviewed, the Canadian broadcast system the other day by a major Holocaust scholar at the University of Toronto who was like saying, Jeffrey Tucker was the first public intellectual to call out Donald Trump as a fascist. So I think we need to listen to him. I'm like, yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. This is really going to help me, like President Trump,
Well, the scary thing is people are embracing it with open arms. This is what they want. They want fascism, and they may not understand that it's fascism, but they're calling for it. And I mean, I read an article from Washington Post. I sort of skimmed it because I was busy, but it was saying that we need to stop calling Trump a fascist, giving a reasonable explanation.
This
Washington Post, yeah.
We should stop calling Trump a fascist. That's really
he's not really a fascist.
No,
and it's like, yes, fine. And one of the points, the most salient point to me was that he promotes individualism, whereas fascism promotes collectivism. And I can see that, but even though Donald Trump's rhetoric on the surface is individualist, it's anything but. I mean, he's a nativist. He's all he's doing is collectivizing people. So to me, that's an invalid argument.
I would say that's not fascist about Donald Trump is that he's typically been like kind of awesome on gun rights, actually. I mean, like every time he speaks about gun rights, he says like everything that's the right thing to say. And it's kind of awesome because he's the only one who does that. On the other hand, he doesn't have power yet. Once you get power, then it's going to be like, hey, can you collect all the guns, please?
Exactly.
So I can sleep.
We can't have dissidents having guns, you know.
Yeah, we can't let Carey Wedler have a gun. What the hell?
Dangerous. A dangerous radical Jew. Oh, no.
Yeah. You're the last person we want armed, right? Trump is essentially a would-be dictator. So what that means is that what he says now doesn't really matter. I mean, he believes in power as a principle. So his policies, I mean, he's not polite that way. I mean, that's not the way the world works. I mean, for him.
Right.
I mean, he's not like, oh, here's my position paper, let me adhere to it. I mean, like, why would he do that? I mean, once you get power, then you do anything you want. And there's nuclear, you drop nuclear bombs on people, you collect something. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's his spirit. That's his mentality. I mean, the rest of these guys are a little bit, you can tell by listening to them, they feel themselves a sense, restrained by their benefactors who've been giving them campaign money, so they have, special interests. They have, they have a sense they have to work with Congress. Maybe there's a Supreme Court. There's a vague sense of checks and balances there. Maybe not so much with Ted Cruz, but even Ted Cruz. I mean, there's a sense that he owes some people something. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is much worse because he's like, I don't owe anybody anything. I'm like my own amazing, I'm this amazing dude. I can do whatever I want. Make me dictator for life, essentially.
And people are like, yeah, that's what we need.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're awesome. Yeah.
It's so scary. And what's so interesting to me is I thought he would have crashed and burned by now. Like, he said enough things. He even criticized going into Iraq. Like, I thought that would have sort of alienated his base. Like, oh, you're criticizing military intervention? Well, screw you. But no. Nope, they're still there.
It's you can say anything you want to about the past because the past has already been done. So he's like, oh, we shouldn't have gone to Iraq. People are like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah. It's Obama's fault now. So we don't have to.
But we've done it. So now we have to have, a global military empire, nuclear weapons, dropping them on everybody's heads and, that sort of thing. So he kind of gets away with it in a way. And what's disgusting to me is these egg-headed, libertarian intellectuals who are sort of vaguely sympathetic to Trump, trying to tell me that actually he's actually more anti-war, I've heard this, and it's like, are you kidding me? He wants a global trade war for one thing, and so I don't care what his opinion. I mean, that Donald Trump has a certain opinion about what should or shouldn't have happened in 2002,
right, over a decade ago.
Yeah. That's supposed to determine, our judgments about him now, and he's clearly the most warmongering, just outrageous, pro-military, pro-empire, controlling would-be despot on the planet.
Well, and he's so ignorant too. Like, he's just like, oh, well, I'll read up on it in a day and then I'll know what I'm talking about. It's like, wait, you don't know what you're talking about and you're running for president? And one of our editors at Anti-Media, he lives in Birmingham, and he was at that Birmingham rally where the Black Lives Matter people were beat up, and he said that he wrote an article on it, and I edited the article. And for some reason, I felt so disgusted by one of the things he said, and I don't know why, but one of the things he said was that Trump was discussing, I guess, like, Obama had called Khomeini the supreme cleric in Iran. He had called him supreme leader because that's his official name. And Trump was like just harping on him. He was like, oh, I would never do that. I'd call him hey you and blow like kissy faces at him. And for some reason, that's just so disgusting to me. And it's not because I value Islam. Like, I don't value any religion any more than the other. I don't subscribe to religion. But the fact that he thinks that he can go around and he thinks he can talk to a country that has very tense relationships with the United States, mostly because of United States intervention, and he can go and be that disrespectful, and it's his right, and the crowd is cheering him on, like, up and down, the world is crumbling.
Did you ever see the old movie? It was made in the 1940s, maybe 1950s, and I think it was with Marlon Brando, and I don't know who else. It was called The Ugly American.
No, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah. So, but this is the caricature of what Americans do. Right? We don't care about anything. We understand nobody's traditions. We don't care about their traditions. We don't care about their religion. We don't care about their traditions. We don't care about their history, their heritage, their culture, because we're awesome. We're freaking awesome, and that allows us to go all over the world and like reconstruct everything. I mean, Donald Trump embodies that spirit in a way. I'm just suddenly realizing because of what you just said. I suddenly realized that that's what he is. He is the ugly American. I'm like,
yeah, I totally agree. And what's so frustrating too is that people on both sides of the aisle, it's like they're willfully ignorant. Most people choose not to be informed about what's going on in the world. It's too depressing. They don't want to deal with it. But then when they're told to pay attention, when there's a mass shooting or there's a tragedy, all of a sudden they are the political expert and they know everything that should be going on. And for me, this is really a fundamental argument against democracy, because if you want to have a functioning democracy, it requires an informed citizenry. You have to be informed, you have to be active, you have to be engaged, and you have to be attentive. And nobody wants to do that. And I don't blame them. Who wants to sit around and read government bills all day? Go ahead.
Carey, look, the whole point of democracy as it was born into the world was not to give the people the right to rule. It was to provide a sense to the people that they were choosing their ruling class when in fact they weren't. Right?
Exactly.
So there's a ruling class that's going to rule, and we're going to give the people the right to select, some people coming and going, and it's going to pacify people,
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's the way democracy is supposed to work.
Mm-hmm. And it's been sold so well. Go ahead.
Yes, and so far it's been fabulous, right? I mean, the ruling class is more or less, had the system of tightening the screws and whatever. It's Machiavelli's universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's suddenly fast forward to 2015, and everything's gone berserk. And now you've got a guy who's actually like persuading the masses he's the Messiah, and they're like, yes, come rule us, Donald Savonarola Trump, and and the ruling class is actually panicked about this guy. Now, normally I would be delighted about the fact the ruling class is panicked about this.
Right.
Except that he's definitely worse than the ruling class.
I mean, if he's just as bad, if not. I mean, what I think is so scary and what makes him more dangerous as the ruling class is that people think he is independent of that. and that he's not beholden to all of the bureaucracy and everything that's going on in Washington. And they think that he's like people, I've talked to many people who are just like, but Carey, you have to admit, at least he's an outsider.
It's like, yeah, but I mean, Hitler's an outsider. I mean, they're all outsiders.
Right, exactly.
Franco was an outsider, Perón and Argentina was an outsider, Hitler. I mean,
Obama was an outsider.
Yeah, no, it's really the outsiders that impose a worse despotism than a stable ruling class. And I hate to say that, but I'm at the point of thinking, look, we're making progress in terms of technology in many other ways.
Right.
With the existing framework, we can take it apart a little bit at a time, and it's awesome. But you get these demagogic populist despots who don't believe they owe anybody anything.
Exactly.
And get their finger on the button of the nuclear weapons, and that's when things begin to get really haywire. So libertarians beware. You're sympathetic for Trump, like, oh, it's so great, he's not part of the ruling class. You're gonna pray someday for the return of the Bush Clinton ruling class. That's a
really scary thought. Hold on, I'm going to grab my laptop charger, and then I wanted to say something. Hold on, my laptop's about to die. Sorry, guys. Hold on. Let's see.
Is it a MacBook?
Sorry about that. Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. Hold on, it's my bed in the background. Okay.
Is it a MacBook Air?
It is, yeah.
The last piece of technology anybody ever needs, as far as
exactly. I'm fine with a Mac, but I mean, I guess what I wanted to say is usually you and I are really positive and everything's awesome.
I know.
Freedom is great, and I love that.
Right,
but I think
too. I'm into that, right?
Yeah, but I do think talking about these issues is really warranted. But on that note, I feel like we're reaching the end. Like that guy holding his sign, the end is near. Like I might as well go do that. But I think as depressing as it is, and as bad as it's going to get, I mean, looking back at history, it always gets bad. It always gets worse before it gets better, And I think the dark days upon us, I think, are a sign that the empire is crumbling. This desperation is evidence.
There's no question that it is crumbling. I mean, so much of the existing reality, so much of life today exists outside of the state, and ever more so every day.
Exactly.
And you could tell stories, I could tell stories. We know this. The world is not being controlled by the political elites anymore. People have so much seceded that nobody's taking the politicians seriously anymore. That is all true, and I think that's tremendously awesome. That said, there still is a state, and it can still do terrible, terrible things. And I guess that's why I guess my own political instincts these days are like, if we can just keep horrible, horrible things from happening, then life's going to be good. That's more or less my view.
Yeah.
But everything I see in politics is like one big horrible thing,
Pretty much. I mean, I've just been waiting for good news, and it's like I'm just constantly disappointed because it seems that everything that's coming out, there's just so much tension and so much divisiveness, and I just wish that people could come back to humanity, instead of like, well,
yeah, it hurts.
Go ahead.
It hurts relationships, and it hurts our social lives. It hurts everything, and it's sad, and it's so unnecessary. Like Christian. I mean, like our relationship with Muslims around the world. I mean, there's no reason for there to be antagonism between Christians, Jews, and Muslims. There's just not. I mean, there was a 700-year period in Spain, between the 6th century and the 14th century or 13th century, where these three groups coexisted, learned from each other, built a glorious foundation that gave birth to modernity in a state of tolerance, love, and peace. And there's no reason for that to not to happen again. I mean, it could happen, and it should happen, and it would happen, were it not for these vested interests out there trying to divide us.
Well, I'm hoping, I mean, I'm a hippie. I live out here in California. I do yoga, I meditate. I have some really nice crystals that I meditate with. But I do think genuinely that there is a shift in consciousness happening. And even if we're not seeing it because there's so much fanaticism, I think there are a lot of people who are silent just because they're apolitical. They don't want to get involved. But their general belief is that it's all bullshit. And they know that it's all about connecting on a human level, on an individual basis. And you know, some of them might be pretty leftist, but I think they can be reasoned with. You know, like I mentioned the yoga community, but all they want is peace and they value individualism. So I actually have a friend, one of my girlfriends who I met in my yoga teacher training. We sort of want to do an outreach to the yoga community to kind of bring the consistency of nonviolent principle to them so they understand the state is not it.
Well, and
we're trying.
Increasingly true across the population, and you and I both need to be very careful because we're both political beings, and we watch politics very carefully, and it's we have to check ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
And remember that this is not reality.
Exactly.
You know, this is an increasingly small part of reality. So thank you for that heads up. I mean, it's what we need to remember. It really is. I mean, because Carey, I think you know about my own personal biography, but I have avoided politics for the last 10 years. I paid no attention to anything, and now I've thrown myself into it, and I get it now. I get why it makes people crazy.
Yeah, it does.
It does. I'm reading all the political news. I'm watching all the debates. And really, it just messes with your brain. You know,
it seriously does.
It really does. And I don't know if it always imposes despair, but there's plenty of reason for despair right now.
I agree, but I'm still going to keep my head out. The long view of history says that I think we're headed in the right direction over time. It may take a few hundred years, but I'm going for the bigger picture, and I think one of man's founding desires is to be free. That's why there's been revolutions for as long as there's been humanity. So
that's right, and ultimately, people do behave as if they're free. I mean, this
exactly.
Talk about your yoga people. I could tell you about, appalling acts of freedom here in Atlanta that I've and appalling and glorious. So yeah. No, totally. I agree with you. We probably passed the point of history. I like to think we passed the point of history where anything like Nazi Germany could ever happen again. I do actually believe that. So
I do too.
Maybe we'll get one last experience of outrageous attempted fascist despotism, and then we'll slaughter that, and that'll be the end. So.
Cheers to that. I will. Amen.
Well, thank you, Carey. It's wonderful to visit with you, and I can't believe how quickly this hour went by. It's just been too long.
I know. You too. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take care, my friend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.